Okay, greetings everyone. Just when I thought I had everything set perfect. This is your boy Gerard, editor-in-chief of Filipino Soul Magazine, aka S.G.I.B magazine, stand for Soldiers Got Intentions. Believe that. Because everyone should be soldering for something, a dream, a goal, an idea, a train of thought, something. And on the P.B.G's production, it stands for Photos by Gerard, the best, and Freelance Publicity and Photography. Oh, well, why I'm wearing my mask? Because some of you may have the coronavirus, so I'm protecting myself from you. Oh, I'm only teasing. You know, I've been waiting to do this video for about 2 weeks. Especially on the 14th, because the 14th something very special, not very special, but something very sad happened. Now, I'm wearing a suit because I'm going to tell you some stories, some Hollywood stories. And I guess the Hollywood story, the fan is on. I hope you can hear me over the fan. If I think it's getting, or it's too loud, I will turn it off. But I am in the Philippines. My brother asked me, how's the weather there? I said, look, for 3 years I never had to put on a sweater. You know, so he said, what? Or a jacket, what? Unless I want to be fashionable. So that's what it is like being in the Philippines. You know, so this suit here is a very special suit to me. But this is the suit that my mother bought for me the first time when I met on my first assignment with the Godfather of Soul Mr. James Brown. Bonnie had told me that Gerard, Mr. Brown only wants people around him in suits, so not a problem, not a problem. And let me touch on something since this is the Hollywood story. When I interviewed Abdul Ferrer, I think who's now the lead singer of the Four Tops, since Levi Stubbs passed away. You know, Levi Stubbs is one of the greatest voices in soul music, you know, of the Four Tops. And when I interviewed him, you know, of course, I'm always, you know, looking professional. And so after the interview, I said, thank you very much for letting me interview you. And you know what he said to me? He said, thank you so much for not wearing jeans. And I thought that was kind of awesome to say. Because, you know, one thing, I'm not downing hip-hop or anything like that, but one thing that we lost, especially when it comes to artists performing, is that we lost that sense of, I'm sure they look good, but, you know, an artist may been hang out all night and, you know, partied all day and hadn't had a chance to go home and change, and then later on that night jump on a stage at a different venue and it's all good. You know, I'm sure it's all good. You know, but for me it's not. So anyway, this was the suit that my mother purchased me for me to meet the Godfather of Soul Mr. James Brown, and so that's why I thought it would be special for me to wear it during this interview. Now, before I get into the main subject of what I'm talking about, let me speak on my mother, because I never really spoke about my mother. Who I, you know, and I'm going to speak on the terms of how I got the entertainment bug in me, because that's what this is about. I'm not going outside the realm of that. You know, when my brother and I were young, you know, my mother was, when she came back into our lives, because she had disappeared for many years, and we lived on the west side of Manhattan, I think on 75th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. Those of you who know the area, I mean, you know the flavor. That was like about 4 blocks away from Needle Park, where the movie was made about Needle Park. So if you want to look at a good movie, Google Needle Park. Well, my mother, she was a hostess. She also worked at NBC, mostly cleaning. I think that's what she did. But at night, she was a hostess. You know, she was at all the underground clubs. If a club did not have my mother hosting it, they called her Duchess. That was not the place to be. So my mom, you know, she was very much out there on the scene. And from time to time, my brother and I were able to go with her into the clubs. And I remember dancing a couple of times or whatever, you know, what little I did have. I had no moves. But we had a lot of guests that would come by, you know. Don Ross came by, Sly Stone's manager would come by. She was always bringing somebody home. And matter of fact, if you know the show Dark Shadows, there was an actor in there called Quentin. Quentin was like the ghost who had the big thick, the vampire had the big thick sideburns like this, like this, like this. And he's always come over to my mother's house, about our house, about every 3 days and eat my mother's leftovers. And you can literally watch him gain weight on the show from stopping over and eating. So anyway, that was my mother at this time. Homosexuality wasn't an open thing. There was still a lot of people in the closet. Matter of fact, that whole thing was in the closet. And there was a lot of actors and producers who were making their names on the Great White Way, and in the movies or what have you. And they would often have to go out of town to their own premieres or you know, to promote a project. So oftentimes they would take my mother along because my mother was gorgeous. You know, and it wasn't uncommon to see her in the papers from that area, best dressed couple, or producer Steve McGowan, who was the name I threw out there. He was one of the producers of the Flip Wilson show. Steve McGowan and the Duchess, you know, the best dressed or something like this or whatever. And it was always nice to see her, you know, out there doing that. She had a friend. Her name was Terry Lomax, and you have to remember, I came from a family that never had love and never showed any attention or any acknowledgement or any encouragement of anything I was doing. But she had a friend named Terry Lomax. Terry Lomax was short. How short? I don't know. He was short, and he drank. At that time, that's what they did. They drank. You know, my mother drank excessively, all her friends drank excessively, and did whatever it was that they were pulling out of her bag or the pocket or whatever, that went along with it too. So what happened was that one day I was, you know, we went to Terry. She also took us to the workshop of the creator of the Pillsbury Doughboy, and that was exciting because we were in this huge workshop with all these different projects, and there's the Pillsbury Doughboy, you know, that he had created. So that's the time, just kind of give you the type of CULTUR how my mother traveled. So anyway, Terry was an actor. He played a clown in various projects that he worked at. He was a clown. And when we went to his house, he had this big collage on the wall. I guess this is where I kind of got hooked into collages, because I started doing collages soon after that, or some later on in my life. And he had this collage with all these pictures and all this stuff, all these interaction of things on there. And he told me, he says, "What do you see?" And I told him, he said, "No, take a closer look. What do you see?" And I looked at the picture and I stared at it. And then it's like a third eye. I started seeing the outline of a clown's face. I saw a clown, and he had tears in his eyes. He was crying. I said, "I see a clown crying." And he says, he came to me about this close, and I could still smell the alcohol and cigarettes on his breath now. You know, he says, "You are the only person who ever saw the clown." He said, "You are special." And I was like, wow. That was the first time anyone ever said anything good or positive to me, that I was special. He said, "You are special." Wow. About 3 weeks later, he threw himself out the window committing suicide. I wanted to tell you that story because, you know, it was, it gave me such I felt very good in that moment in time about myself. So that's where the entertainment bug, I guess, initially was ignited in my soul, in my heart. That was one moment. Now I'm going to tell you about three other women that are important in my life. And I'm going to start here. So I'm going to be taking the camera here and moving it closer to the screen so you can get a good look at the picture, and then I'll be putting it back, okay? And I will introduce them, and then you just have to follow along with me, okay? Okay. There you go. This is a picture of Ja'net Dubois. This is a picture of Ja'net Dubois. Right here. She just passed away about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Matter of fact, the 14th was the burial, her burial in Hollywood. And I definitely wanted to be there. More so, I wanted to do this video then because I wanted to do it at the same time that her service was going on. This here, in the middle, is Bonnie Hilton Sweeney. I'm going to talk more about, but I want you to look at the picture and remember the faces as I tell you the stories about them. This is Calamina Pittman. Calamina Pittman was one of the co-founders of the pre-Grammy party that I will go into in a moment. And this is Miss Sally Rogers, who is also a performer. So these three ladies here were like sisters. And I'm going to come back to this picture later because there's something I'm going to tell you about Ja'net that happened on this day. Okay? So I'll put it back here and I will continue. Okay, Bonnie Hilton Sweeney, who was the founder of the pre-Grammy party, I've written about it plenty of times, and I'm sure a number of you have probably seen it on my Facebook or on my YouTube. Bonnie Hilton Sweeney created a pre-Grammy party that was coincide with Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party. Because at that time, blacks weren't as welcome as they are today in pre-Grammy parties. You had to be extraordinary, to be the creme de la creme of the crop to go to Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party. Bonnie, who worked for Playboy as PR and public relations. And if you were having a party in Hollywood at this time, and if Bonnie wasn't putting your guest list together, then chances are you had a minimum amount of A-listers to attend, because Bonnie was the master of networking. Her thing was bringing people together, people who could help you achieve the next level in whatever it was that you were pursuing, and thus networking. Networking now has been converted into, what can you do for me and how much is it going to cost? Or can you help me and, how much do I have to pay? Well, it wasn't always like that, y'all. It really wasn't. If I can help you and I do it today. If I can help you, then that's why I'm known as the Prince of Wannabes. You see at the end, I said I'm the Prince of Wannabes, because whatever it is that you want to be, if I can help you get to that next level, please allow me to, because your success is my success. So anyway, Bonnie decided to have a pre-Grammy party the last Sunday of the week of the Grammys. And it was for blacks to celebrate and honor their own accomplishments and achievements, whether if it was in the industry, or whether it was in community service, or rather, you know, we celebrated our own. Of course, others were able to come, and soon it grew into something extraordinary. I mean, it was everybody, anybody was at Bonnie's pre-Grammy party. I came aboard the second year as her personal photographer. Calamita Pittman, who I told you about, she's the one here. She was also on was one of the co-founders of the pre-Grammy party. She's also known as the first rapping school teacher. Calamita and her husband also have a classic song, Google it, called Rosebud, and you can hear them perform their duet. It was on the chart. It was a charted song. I can say that. But she was also known as the first rapping school teacher. so she also carries that belt too as well. But she was masterful in themes and decorating and all this. She's an artist. She's an accomplished artist in Hollywood today. You can find her work on the internet. You can find, she's also founder of the, forgive me, Calamita, the annual breast cancer awareness. And she did it in dedication of her mother, who also passed away of cancer. Her husband is Jerry Pittman. Some of you may have heard me from before, a long time ago, that when, you know, especially when I was in Las Vegas, I would talk so fast. I don't talk so fast now. Because Jerry used to tell me, Gerard, you talk too fast. So whenever I found myself speaking fast, I would pause and say, Jerry, and I would slow down because I get very hyper sometimes. Some of you may know. Some people always say, why are you so angry? I'm not angry. It's just how I talk. My brother tells me that. My daughter tells me that. Why are you getting so angry? I'm not getting angry. That's just the tone of my voice, you know. So anyway, Jerry would tell me to speak slower, and thus I have spoken slower since then. Jerry was also the first black limousine owner in Hollywood. So he carries that belt too. He's also part of the press corps at NBC, I think at NBC in Hollywood, or one of the major networks. He still carries his press credentials and goes to whatever it is that he wants to go in his retirement days, you know, just to be a part of it, or just to re-experience whatever it is that he's experiencing, because I'm sure he's experienced it before. So Jerry, Calamita, Ja'net Dubois, myself, you know, we used to sit at Bonnie's house in Hollywood with Ja'net and watch acts come and perform in her living room. And we would laugh. We would laugh. We had such a good time, you know, them coming in and singing and telling jokes and dancing right in Bonnie's living room. And Ja'net also babysat my two daughters, both of them babysat my two daughters, Gianna and Janelle, and more on that as we go on. Sally Rogers, I didn't know too much about Sally Rogers, but I knew Sally Rogers was a performer who was part of that posse, I guess you might say. A little more about Bonnie. Bonnie was also the Godfather of Soul Mr. James Brown's manager, confidant, you know, lover, however it is you want to put it together. She was everything to the Godfather of Soul Mr. James Brown. And he would call her every day and what have you. And, you know, when I met Bonnie, I walked into the set of We Love Rock and Roll hosted by Howard Hessman. I've always had a knack of getting past security, so what I was walking and I saw in the marquee, We Love Rock and Roll, and it was rehearsal. So I got past security. So I scoped out the crowd, and I saw Bonnie sitting there by herself. I always have to try to latch on somebody who has a legitimate purpose of being there. So I asked Bonnie, I said, hi, I'm Gerard. This is Hi, I'm Bonnie Sweeney. I said, I'm a photographer. She said, you want to be my photographer? I said, yeah, sure. She said, okay, go back and take some pictures of Mr. Brown. I said, what? She said, yeah, tell him I sent you. So of course I walked backstage and I said, Mr. Brown, Bonnie told me to take pictures of you. He was getting dressed with his boots, which I also have a pair of Godfather boots that come with this outfit, because of course you got to have the boots. And so, he was all smiling. He says, never take a picture of me smoking a cigarette. So I said, okay. So I started taking pictures of him. I like saying that because when he passed away, when they did a documentary of him, they put one still picture of him smoking a cigarette in there. And it brought tears to my eyes because I knew he did not want to ever have an image of him doing that. In spite of all his trials and tribulations, he still tried to maintain a certain integrity, a certain facade, a certain image when it comes to the public. And like most things that black people do, there's always someone who wants to diminish it, bring it down, or whatever. So anyway, on that show there was the Temptations, the four Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Frankie Valli, Jefferson Starship, Chuck Berry, and a host of others, the Four Seasons, and I got plenty of pictures of them or whatever, like that, or what have you. I talked to Chuck Berry the second time he was supposed to go on, and I said, how you doing? He says, I hate it. I hate this. I was like, what? Is Chuck Berry bending to me? He says, in fact, I'm not going on. And he packed his shit and walked out the back door. I guess he came back the night of the show, but rehearsal, he was done. So if you ever know anything about it, I interviewed Chuck Berry a few times since then. If you know Chuck Berry, he only travels with just his guitar, his handler, and a driver. He doesn't have no entourage anymore. That's all he travels with. His band is whatever hot band is in that town, because all of them know the Chuck Berry songs. And that's who he uses. That's who he does his thing with. And he walks off the stage, gets back in his limousine like the Lone Ranger, and rides off into the sunset. So that was Chuck Berry. I also photographed Mr. Brown at that time when he first met hip hop. That was the first time he ever did anything with hip hop. And with Bonnie, we'd done the pre-Grammy party and what have you. A lot of things went on, and a couple of highlights. There was one time when Bonnie was in LA, and we were putting the pre-Grammy party together. I was helping get Ollie Woodson to Bonnie because he was flying in. And Ollie Woodson was a permanent fixture for the pre-Grammy party. He might have missed a few years at a time, but he was always back there. The Jacksons, the Temptations, just a number of people there. Joe Jackson with his newest girl group, Charlie Woodson, a lot of Lou Rawls, what's his name, Bailey? I can't remember his Bailey. Bailey is one of the big time managers. I can't remember his name, but if you know Bailey. So it was always a lot of people there. And so anyway, this one time, we were in this hotel setting up, show getting ready to go on in a few hours. We get ready to start. And Bonnie got a call from the hotel and told her, you have to cancel your event. And Bonnie said, what? Cancel my event? Yeah, because Little Bow Wow had took over the whole hotel doing his movie. So Bonnie had to move everything to a Shriners location and continue on with the pre-Grammy party. I don't think there's very many people who I know that had to weigh it all to be able to pull that off, and she did. Bonnie used to call me in the morning, Gerard, I got no money. And it's funny because when you would think it made a lot of money. It also morphed into the Godfather of Soul Mr. James Brown Truth Awards, and it also was the platform for his magazine called The Truth that I was the East Coast representative of. You know, and when I decided to want to put the reunion down, I had to have a face-to-face with Calamita, because Calamita was the one who knew everything, you know. And so it's funny, it took me just recently, not too many years ago, I learned how to pronounce her name, Calamita. You know, I used to have an awful time pronouncing her name. I used to call her Car, you know, and it was, I think it's one of the things that I inherited from my mother, you know, not being able to pronounce names, you know, and a semi-quick sense of wit for humor. And I sat down with her because I didn't want her to tell me on the phone. I want to have a face-to-face, and you know, she told me how much money she would put up. She said, Gerard, to be honest with you, she says, we often I barely got my money back. It wasn't a money maker. It was just something I said, oh, okay. I said, that makes sense, you know. My body would always say, Gerard, I got no money, you know, every morning. So one time, Bonnie had called me and said, Gerard, Mr. Brown's going to be at the VH1 Fashion Awards. Go cover him. I said, okay, Bonnie. So I would always have to contact Mr. Bobbitt. Mr. Brown had, say, 3 circles. There was his inner circle, with, say, Bonnie, Reverend Sharpton, and his close associates. Then there was the second ring around him, that would be me and whoever, and then the third circle would be you, you know. So I was able to always call Mr. Bobbitt and say, Mr. Bobbitt, you know, Bonnie told me to go, okay, come on down, Gerard, and I would come down. In fact, if you wanted to see Mr. Brown and he was playing in your town, I could call Mr. Bobbitt and tell him to put your name on the guest list, and you would be able to go and see Mr. Brown. But you better show, because Mr. Bobbitt did not like no-show. So Bonnie told me, she said, Gerard, when you see him, tell him thank you. I said, thank you? She said, yes, he thinks he gave you $1,000. I said, what? I laughed, she laughed. I said, oh, really, Bonnie? I said, really? I said, okay. So when I saw Mr. Brown, I said, Mr. Brown, thank you. I said, okay, like that. But it didn't matter if I got the money or not, you know. There was a lot going on. You know, there was someone who was charged with embezzlement inside their camp. Because one thing about famous and rich people is that when they allocate something to be done, they don't want to hear about it no more. They expect it to be done. So if someone says, here, give this person $1,000, in their mind they gave him $1,000. Now that person who was supposed to give you $1,000 may not give you that $1,000. I'm not saying, you know, that was the case or whatever, but you know, it probably happens more than not. And so I was more grateful that Mr. Brown had thought enough of me and my work to give me $1,000. One more story about Mr. Brown. He was performing at the Palladium, I think, in LA. And it had an underground tunnel like this. I had took some great shots of Danny Ray. Danny Ray, who you may not know, he's the one who throws the cloak. He's the one that throws the cloak over the Godfather of Soul, Mr. James Brown. So I had shots of him. I had shots of Athea. Athea was his wife. This was the first time she ever performed with him on stage. She went on stage and she sung with him. So I had shots of that. So by going underneath the tunnel, the guy at the venue told me, you can't take pictures in here. I said, what are you talking about? I'm Mr. Brown's photographer. I take pictures. No, go away, little boy, go away. So I'm taking pictures, so I'm coming into the tunnel, and he's coming at me, and he grabbed my camera. And when he grabbed my camera, I turned into the Hulk. I slammed it on the ground. Don't you ever touch my camera. And so Frank McCrae, who was Mr. Brown's road manager, and we did a few things too. And he said, "What's going on? What's going on?" I said, "Frank, he wants the camera." He says, he says, "Give it to him." I said, "Frank, what are you talking about? I got pictures of Theo singing, you know, the whole show." He says, "Give it to him." So I opened up the back of the camera, I pulled the film out, exposed it, and gave it to him. I vow never, ever to let that happen again. So anyway, on that note, I was photographing Patti LaBelle and James Ingram, and in North Carolina. I went to this newspaper, and you know, because I grew up in North Carolina, so I was going to show them a little bit about Boy Does Good like this. And I brought my portfolio, and he turned to my portfolio. A lot of press clippings, And he says, "I don't believe you took any of these pictures." I said, "What? You don't believe I took any of these pictures?" He says, "No." He says, "Tell you what, bring me a picture of Patti LaBelle tonight, and I will believe." I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. How would you know I took the picture?" He went, I could see in his mind, "Oh, you're a smart SOB. Back in the day, we would have hung your ass." You know. So anyway, so I'm taking pictures. You know, I talked to Sneed. No, I can't remember. Patti LaBelle's manager, but I got there. He gave me press credentials to take pictures. So it's James Ingram's birthday, and James Ingram's wife came out and surprised him with a birthday cake in the middle of his performance, him and Patti. And they kissed him and all this stuff. So after he finished singing, he was going downstairs, because he had told me don't take pictures of her. So when he was going downstairs, I had my camera by my side. I said, "James," and I took a picture of him. And so the next thing you know, I go back in front of Patti, and I see her coming, you know, her singing, and I'm taking pictures, and I see James and his people coming at me. So I rewind the cartridge into the film into the cartridge. I popped it back to put it in my pocket, and they came and put it on my camera. "Take it," and they took my camera case, my camera. I had a cousin up there, so I ran up there in the audience, and I gave him about 6 rolls of film. I said, "Here," I said, "Get this out of here." And so when they found out there was no film with the camera, they came back and they grabbed me and brought me downstairs, and James Ingram hit me. And I went to the hospital, you know. When we going out, they said, "James," he said, "you hit a photographer." And James said, "No, I didn't hit him, I was just trying to kiss him." Why did he say that? Of course, the news got out, they were calling me for interviews. I got all these tapes. So, you know, I got receipts, as Roland Martin says. You know, so they're asking me about the kiss and all that stuff like this or whatever. So, but I sued, because I sued for $65,000. The lawyer was going to take the case, but then James switched lawyers, and the other lawyer said no, not. And so at that time I vowed again.